Thank you so much, Tom Cruise.
That name gets me
Such a
so
great
far.
name.
Why, thank you. See, I always have this unreasonable fear that if for some reason I get caught up in trouble, the headline is going to say something to the effect of 30-year-old Florida man Tom Cruise, which is going to be a great clickbait title one day for something. But hopefully it's good news. Welcome to Academically Distanced, a series of discussions with people from all across FSU on their experiences in academia during the time of COVID. I'm Tom Cruise, the digital media manager over at FSU Libraries, and I'm joined today by Dr. Aimée Boutin, right? A professor of French within FSU's Department of Modern Languages and Linguistics. She specializes in 19th century French poetry, women writers, cultural history, gender studies, art history, soundscapes, and the city in literature. Dr. Boutin has a long-standing interest in voice and sonic representations, and she's currently on sabbatical through 2021. Dr. Boutin, thank you for joining me today. What have you been up to most recently during this time of lockdown?
Right now, I feel like I'm in a good space. It took me a while to get here, through several months of different feelings and reactions to the current pandemic. I was teaching in the spring semester, and of course, like everyone else, I pivoted to remote teaching. And when that was over in May, it was necessary to take some downtime. So that was actually kind of liberating because I felt like we were in this parenthesis, and the normal time would return soon. And so I could just relax. And I realized how absolutely tired I was after several years of intensive work and programming my time by the hour, the minute, juggling family obligations. It was good in May to take some time off. And, there was the new normal was going to return soon, so we could take some time off. That didn't happen, or it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
Maybe it never will happen. So that's been hard. So after thinking about how, after you're fully relaxed, after you've taken some time, you've slept till 10 several days, you've, decided to spend quality time with your loved ones in your immediate circle, then, you're ready to go out, then you can't go out. So I felt like I went through these different stages of grief, like the 5 stages of grief. Are you familiar with those?
Let's go ahead and review through them and we'll all feel them together.
Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then finally acceptance. I think that really sums up how I felt. Now I might be in the acceptance phase, although I think it's a cycle and I could go back. At first it's denial. So that's that feeling of, well, it's a parenthesis. So let's sleep, let's go to the beach, let's have some family time, let's learn to make bread. My husband has learned to make bread. So we have fresh bread, almost every day, which is great. I made some fantastic meals, some elaborate cakes for everyone's birthday. Maybe the not denial phase where you think, okay, well, this isn't really happening. It's only happening somewhere else in New York, and it's not coming to Florida. But anyways, I'm doing the right thing. I am staying home, and nobody I know has COVID-19, and surely this will just go away sometime. And then it doesn't. So then you get in the anger phase. When is this going to stop? I cannot do any of the things I plan to do. So I mentioned to you when we talked earlier that I had wanted to go visit my father, who is in his late 80s in Canada. I'm Canadian as well as American. So, in this downtime, what a great opportunity to go visit my father, whom I haven't seen for at least a year. But for the first time in, I don't know, over 100 years, the border between Canada and the US closed on March 21st, I believe. So I can't really go there. And I think I could go there now, but I would have to quarantine for 14 days before seeing my father. It doesn't sound like it's straightforward. So I haven't done it. Do you usually travel in the summer?
We typically go on smaller road trips, things like going to the coast, which it's it feels like such a gamble because we imagine, oh, there's probably these lesser known, at least coastal areas that we could go out to. We used to go out to either the Midwest or North Carolina, especially to
Mm-hmm.
visit my partner's parents. And even though they live in smaller rural communities, it's become so prolific. Like even stopping at a gas station immediately raises that risk. And when you're dealing, especially with my partner's parents, anyone who's of a certain age can fit within that vulnerable population. And it's like
Right.
you said, it is that non-linear cycle within those stages of grief, because there are people, especially those who are vulnerable, who are going through intense isolation, and you
Yes.
wish you could offer them at least company, which, thanks to, say, tools like Zoom and other ones like it, we can offer that in some capacity.
But it's not really the same. That's one
Hmm.
thing that I've been thinking about. When you're really busy, you actually don't, actually spend many months sometimes without seeing your friends because you're really, really busy and you always have something going on. So you don't see people, but you feel like you had an element of choice. At some level, you chose not to see them. And if you really wanted to, you could have. And now we're in this situation where we have a lot of time, or we have a different relationship to time, but we have no choice. Or we feel like we have no choice. I mean, any choice would be, like you said, putting yourself at risk or being reckless so that we don't experience choice um, as free choice the way we did. And so, the other thing I was planning to do this summer, as I'm on sabbatical, and I was supposed to be teaching in London in the month of June, and then I was going to stay on and do some work in Paris. I had some conferences lined up. No travel to Paris, except virtually. Here I'm on my Paris balcony, enjoying the clear Parisian weather up here with my virtual glass of wine. I'm holding on to, the hope. That's what keeps me going. The hope that I will be able to do the things that I planned, later, whenever that later is, since I do have time.
It's been interesting to see how people have struggled with what it means to be stuck, to not have choice, and searching for choice in other places. For instance, your husband taking up bread baking.
Yes.
He's found a focus within the scope of his influence, and that's been good to hear. And you've taken up cooking certain meals.
Mhm.
I guess, is there anything else within that sphere of influence that you've been taking part in lately?
I realized that kind of not having any structure and being a little depressed from, thinking about what I'd lost, I decided to go swimming. The pool in Tallahassee at Truesdale Aquatic Center is open by reservation, and they're following CDC guidelines. And I usually swim in the summer. I don't usually have to plan it, but I've been swimming 3 times a week, and that really has been great. It's great self-care. Since I feel like I'm exercising, I love to be out in the sun, and I've got a fabulous tan, so I can be happy about that. Um, Weather's been gorgeous. Despite the pandemic, the weather is gorgeous. It's a really nice Olympic sized pool in Tallahassee. So, and building up my strength in the pool and developing my, technique or that kind of thing has also been enjoyable.
Gosh, it makes me think what an ordeal it is just to go outside, to have to strategize and plan. And then, in your case, you have a whole infrastructure that you can participate in just to have, what sounds like very, very precious time. I'm glad that that's brought you the comfort it has. So you mentioned being on sabbatical. We mentioned earlier that, as someone who has not participated too much in some of the more formal parts of higher ed myself, despite working at FSU, could you kind of give me an idea of theoretically what should sabbatical look like, and what's it turned into during this time?
Well, a sabbatical after 6 years performing adequately, then you can apply for a sabbatical from the university. If you're a research faculty member, you then, if awarded, can dedicate that year to full-time research. And you have to put together a proposal because it's not just free time, it's free time to do something specific. So pledge, you write in your report that you're going to do these particular things. In my case, as I'm in the Department of Modern Languages and Linguistics, and I research 19th century France. I was planning to go to Paris to work in libraries and archives there, and to write my book on women in the railway. That's my new project right now. I can't travel to libraries. I do have the time, so I feel privileged that I have the time, the unstructured time, and I have the stability that a salary and a job allow, right? So I'm not in the position of many other people in the United States who have lost their jobs and don't know what the next step is. So I feel privileged in that way. I still need to meet the obligations of the sabbatical. So in 2019, I stated, yes, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to these libraries. I'm going to write this book because I've done the research here and there. So now I'm having to rethink the project or do what I can do online. There's lots of resources online. It's just that all the research is online, so you can't mix it up. And there's some things you don't really know how to uncover or discover online. But so that's been a mixed bag. But in terms of research, I'm moving along. A colleague of mine has just shared some resources with me. So I've been going through those resources, and that's been nice, connecting with other people.
I found that, and it's probably unique for me in that I have many friends who have moved abroad, and we always theoretically had those ideas of, oh, let's get on a group call, let's collect, and I've spoken to them more ever since this has ever started than when we were making all those promises to each other. And it's been interesting how, in a strange way, at least for me personally, I've been able to really maintain those friendships in a much healthier way just out of necessity. But speaking of your research, that was just my little personal tangent there. Going through your bio, there was mention of a focus in soundscapes and the city, which sounds like two very, very tactile subjects to engage with, which obviously, couldn't be further from you now, unfortunately. But I am interested in that. Could you tell me a little bit about your work regarding those topics?
That's very interesting when you relate it to the current situation. So a lot of my work and the class I teach in London, Walking in London, is about mobility and the senses. So I studied, and it was the subject of my book, City of Noise, how the sounds of the past are represented in literature. So literature is a good source for understanding how people hear their environment and make sense of the sounds in their environment, how they perceive the environment as noisy or harmonious, whether they find noise egregious or maybe comforting, and who's producing the noise. The noise of children, the noise of dogs, the noise of foreigners. All of these things have connotations that color how we hear noise. So today, there's been a lot of articles and newspaper reporting, as well as scholarly articles on how the pandemic has affected the senses. how people are missing the noise of New York City, how they found all those honking buses and the train and the whatever noise of people in the street. They found that comforting. That was what they heard on a daily basis. And now that people aren't going outside, it's very silent. Interestingly, I haven't perceived a change in Tallahassee because I live in a quiet neighborhood and it's still quiet. So that's been interesting to contrast how the sounds of the city have not changed for me, where they have changed for, New Yorkers, Parisians, people in Madrid, people in maybe San Francisco, in large cities. And then you mentioned touch, of course. One of the things that's really difficult about virtual contact with friends is that you feel very alone. Nobody can touch each other. You can't hug your family members who are outside of your household. Even within your household, you don't necessarily want to be touchy-feely because in one household, people are going out and you don't necessarily feel as comfortable as before. So I think that the virtual, while it allows you to increase your contact because you don't have to move to communicate with people via Zoom. You can contact 50 people all at once. If you want to have a conference or improvised party. And I know that there have been, parties via Zoom. I haven't participated in any, but that's a form of coming together, but it doesn't have the actual touch.
So, being someone who's never lived in a place like New York, but has visited, as well as Paris, out of what you've mentioned, I didn't even have that frame of reference. Is sounds of the city and how doubly isolating it must be, not only to be stuck within your home, but feel like, that's sort of a deafening silence.
A deafening silence, yes.
You also mentioned to me previously how this pandemic has affected other resources that are typically available to you, especially as a researcher. So could you give me a little context for what is ILL, interlibrary loan, and UBorrow? How does that typically assist in your research?
Because I work in French studies, the library in Tallahassee doesn't always have all the resources that I want to consult. So I usually rely on a service called interlibrary loan, and UBorrow is similar. So interlibrary loan is a service where I can request from FSU books that are held in other collections. I can put in a request and the other library will loan it to FSU. FSU will loan it to me. UBorrow is that same kind of service, but within the state of Florida. So I can get a book from University of Florida or University of Central Florida quickly through a sort of interlibrary loan that's just for institutions in the state. So those two services have been interrupted or suspended during the pandemic, either because of staffing or because of the initial concern that of the virus may be on the books. I'm not really sure why, but like everything else, everything is suspended. And so one can't really easily access physical books that are in other collections. Many libraries across the US and across the world have been closed since March. Publishers have made some books available on their websites. JSTOR has increased the amount of books. I've been using resources on EBSCO as well to get ebooks. I never really liked ebooks to begin with, right? So all day long, every day, reading all these ebooks and having to keep track of them, as opposed to physical books that I can stack up and put bookmarks in and post-its. is a different way of doing research. And some of the books that I was consulting, I spent quite a lot of time last week on this. I was looking at these guidebooks from 19th century France, which was great because I felt like I was traveling in 1861. But those would be wonderful to flip through and look at the maps. Instead, you're having to open your Adobe Acrobat and push on the zoom plus sign so that you can actually see the map, which is on 2 pages. And so that's, disappointing that when I can't actually touch the books.
As someone who engages mostly with video, digital content, I have a most vicarious appreciation for what it means, we find ourselves talking about it again, to have that tactile relationship with research, to be able to, feel the page, to bring your face closer rather than having to press the plus button on yet another screen.
You simulate the way a 19th century person would have consulted the book too, when you actually can get the physical book, because none of this digital technology existed at that time. And the books can be different sizes. Some are large, some are small, some of the maps are fold out. But again, I'm hoping, what keeps me going is knowing that even though there's no sign that the pandemic is going to let up anytime soon, there's no end in sight, really. I'm holding out that I will be able to go to France in January as planned. I have a fellowship in Lyon at the Collegium de Lyon starting in January 2021 for 6 months. So I'm holding out that I'll be able to do that, and that keeps me going.
Hope is an interesting thing. We talked a little bit previously about what it took to keep up with motivation, focus, and productivity.
I do think hope is important, and keeping a focus and finding motivation within yourself. Especially during any sabbatical, even when you don't have a pandemic, the key to success or the key to sanity in a sabbatical is self-motivation and structure. And I'm finding that I have to just find the resources within myself in this uncertain time to just stay focused and motivated, which some days is easy and other days is hard. But, like I said, today I had that good experience looking through some documents that a colleague shared with me, and I enjoy doing my research. So this is fun, and it's a way to kind of escape reality while meeting my goal. This is the best situation to be in right now. So I try and spend some time on it every day.
It's been fun during conversations like this to hear sometimes about the surprising positives that come from a time of adversity, and we do both acknowledge the fact that we are in mutually very privileged positions. We do have gainful employment and the ability to at least maintain during a time when many others are having such difficulty. But in the midst of that, we have moments where we can be put into a place of introspection. How much our husband can make bread day after day, and how much we enjoy that.
Yes. See, the thing is, when you go swimming, you can eat as much bread as you want. So, it's all about balance.
I think that'll be the major takeaway from today.
Yes.
For everyone at home. Remember, if you if you regularly swim, as much bread as you want. That's how right. We cope. Yes. Does that count as bargaining?
I think it might. Yes, and that leads to acceptance. So,
exactly.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity to talk with you. It's been delightful.
Absolutely.
And, I was glad to share some of my experiences, and I wish you well with your podcast.
Thank you so much for offering your time and for talking with me today.